Over the last couple of years I've reviewed quite a few different action cameras, but there's a lot of people out there that don't need anything as sophisticated or as elaborate as any of these. All they really want is something that they can take paintballing or attach to their bicycle that'll cost about $50 or £40 or less. Well, unfortunately there isn't a decent product in that price range. You see, the problem is that there is the keyring cameras, the A2816, that take good, clear, quality 720p HD video, but they're in a silly little keyring case that's no use for that function. And then on the other hand, you've got one of these, and this is an ACT20 camera, which has a great little waterproof metal case that you can attach to lots of things very easily. But unfortunately, the video quality of this is pretty poor. So to sum up, we've already got a decent budget case and a decent budget camera. Now let's have a think about that. What can we do with those two things? Now I want any manufacturers to get a pen and paper ready, because I'm going to show you how to make lots of money. All you need to do is put the insides of one of these into one of these. Again, if you weren't listening, the insides of the A2816 into the case from the ACT20. And when you figure that out, you should have a decent quality 720p camera that's water resistant and should be able to be sold for less than $50 or £50. Now the purpose of this video is to review a camera that's actually out and promises to fulfill all those requirements already. It's this model. It records in 1080p though, and it costs £46. So the question is this the camera that we're looking for? And the answer is, unfortunately, no it's not. It's actually a little bit rubbish. I'll explain more in the rest of the video, but you can always switch off now if you want and go and do something more interesting, because this isn't going to get any better. Right, here is the camera. It's the SJ72. It goes up to 20 meters underwater apparently and should survive. It's got 1080p Full HD. I think that's supposed to say Full HD, but obviously something's gone wrong. 1440 by 1080 resolution though, and an H.264 codec. Notice here 5 megapixel with a dot next to it, not the 12 megapixel option. And then along the bottom here, there's a few things: video camera, HDMI, TV out, 170 degree lens it says, and micro SD of course. Now if we look at the side of the box, there's a bit of a contradiction here, because it says the 170 degree lens is for the 12 megapixel version. That's the one I haven't got. A 120 degree lens on the 5 megapixel one, which is the one that I have got. So mine's got a 120 degree lens. Well, there's the camera itself. Let's get it out of the box and see exactly what you get inside here, and I'll explain why it's not actually all that good. Well, first impressions, it's not bad actually. It's a plastic device, not a metal one. You can see here, HD full video thingamajig, 1080p, 5 megapixel, which matches up with the thing that was on the front of the box. Just one button on it at the back here in the middle. There's a hole on the left there where it says mic. That's for the sound to get through. And if we hold down that button, a blue light comes on behind a little window here to show it's powered up. And it vibrates as well. It's got one of those vibration motors in. Notice the white line on the top there. That's to show where the middle on top of the camera is, so you can line it up properly without sort of twisting it. Sorry about the mucky fingers, by the way. I was cleaning my bike and I've got some sort of oil on them or something. I'll try to ignore that. Notice the flashing light. That means it's recording. Press the button again, it stops flashing, or it should do if I'd pressed it properly, and it goes into standby. That's all it does: record and standby and off. Now if we get the back off, we'll show what's inside here. Notice there's a rubber ring around the edge there. That's to seal it, of course. And if I flip it the right way up, you'll see the different things in here. Going from the top left, that slider switch there, that goes between a camera mode and, video camera mode and a photo mode. The top right one, 1080p or 720p. There's the micro SD card in the middle. You got a reset hole, AV out, HDMI micro, or is it mini out? Anyway, and a USB mini B. The on-off button in the middle there gets pressed by the button inside the cap. It's recessed and you can't actually press it while the back's off. Now if we slide these switches across to 720p, notice the LED doesn't change colour or anything, so you just have to know what mode you're in by remembering what you pressed earlier on. Now once you've switched into photo mode, you can't actually press a button, as I mentioned, without putting the back on. So if you want to take a photo, flip the switch, put the back on, press the button, take the back off, flip the switch again. It's a bit ridiculous that, isn't it? So everything has to be done with the back cap on. Now if you hold it down, it switches off like that. Now let's just put that to one side and see what all this other stuff is inside the box. If I was handing out points here, I think it's full marks to whoever's in charge of the accessories for this camera because they've done a good job. If we just look at what we get in here, first off, the instruction manual. It's a nice colour manual, printed clearly. There aren't too many mistakes in it. Here's the specs page. Notice on there it says it's an AVI file format of an H.264 file, which is sometimes a bit of a pain to work with. A few other bits and pieces on there. On this side it mentions that you have to set the time using one of those time.txt files that you create in a word processor and drop onto the card. Always a bit of a pain, that. This page shows you what all the different bits are in the back of the camera. Now notice these are all the accessories that you get inside the box. There's quite a lot of things there, aren't there? Although these things aren't included, and you might need them, such as a HDMI leader, you'll definitely need a micro SD card to put in the camera, a nice fast one as well. Now it does come with a driver disc that I'm not going to try out, probably full of viruses and pointless. This packet has a few sticky back pads in it and some sort of grease to put around the O-ring, keep it waterproof. It's got a cleaning cloth. You've got the usual USB A to mini B lead, AV out lead that's mono, and you've got this USB charger plug, which is for another country. I can't use that one. There's some screws and things in here, which are presumably spares for it. It's got a separate cap. Now that one, the separate one, is waterproof because it doesn't have a microphone hole on it, so make sure you use the right one if you go underwater. There's this Velcro strap, which I presume you could sort of put around an arm or something, and then there's these two rubber straps, which are a bit like octopus legs, which I assume you'd use underwater, although I'm not going to be testing any of this kind of stuff out. I'm rushing past this because it's all a bit pointless. There's these two mounts here. I'll show you what those do. First off, you put this one around the camera and tighten it up. It's all plastic, this stuff. It's a little bit like a GoPro mount because it has those kind of same springy legs that attach into this separate pad here that you can stick to things or do all the things you want with it, really, because that separate bit there has strap holes in it, and it's got a tripod hole on it, and of course you could put a sticky back pad on the back as well if you wanted to, so you could attach that to lots of different things. So it's fine, that. Now, the other bit of plastic, that is to go around a bicycle handlebar. Now, if you attach those two things together, notice that's rather tall. I can imagine that getting a lot of vibrations through it as you were riding along on a bike. So it might not be the best way to mount it. Now, I'm going to show you some test footage, and unfortunately this is where everything goes downhill rapidly. Now this first shot is in the 1080p mode, and notice how much CMOS wobble there is. That's the kind of wobbly underwater effect that you're getting, which is certainly not the kind of thing that you'd want on an action camera. Now if we switch it over to 720p, as this is now, you'll see that things are a lot better. It's quite dark and it crushes the blacks down so that you can't make out detail in dark areas, but it's certainly not as wobbly as a 1080p mode. Now inside, this is 1080p again. Notice how we've got black bars at either side, left and right. Now it is 1080p by 1440, which would usually mean that the resolution stretches out to fill the screen, but this camera doesn't seem to do that. It's cropping off the edges and doing a 4:3 ratio image. If we move over to 720p mode, you'll notice how the image now is wider. You can see more detail in the picture either side. So the 1080p mode wasn't squeezing it down, it was just cutting the edges off. So if you want 16:9 video, you have to film in 720p mode. And there doesn't seem to be any real difference in the quality or sharpness of the image between the two. Now you might think I'm being a little bit hard on this camera because on a nice bright sunny day like this, and if you hold the camera nice and steady, it doesn't really look too bad. Of course we've got to restrict ourselves to filming in 720p because the 1080p mode is useless. But when you do that you think, well, the camera's okay, but you got to remember you can buy cameras for about £50 on eBay, full 1080p, little pocket HD cameras with LCD screens on them, and this thing costs about £45, so really it's not providing very great value for money. Of course you do get those accessories with it, but the question is it going to be any good as an action camera? Well, I'll do a little bit more testing on that later on, but one thing that you have to decide is, of course, that this isn't a 1080p camera even though it says it on the box, because this is 1080p mode now, and now we'll just flip across to 720p again, and that's what that looks like. So you're going to be filming in 720p all the time. Now one thing about this camera, the sound quality is completely rubbish. Just have a listen to this clip. And that clip was taken with the cap off the back of the camera, so that's as good as the sound is ever going to get. Now this next clip is something you'll never see again. The inside of a Jessop's camera store. For those people in the UK, of course, you'll all know that the Jessop's camera chain closed down. For foreign viewers, which make up the majority of these, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. But the reason I'm showing you this is not for nostalgic reasons, it's for this little bit now. You'll see the jump in the frame there, and that's the gap between the clips. The camera creates clips of 5 minutes in length, and between every one of those you get that little bit of a jump there. It doesn't lose anything. The clips, if we look at the data here, 1440 by 1080 is at 15 frames a second, which explains the sort of blurriness. 720p is at 30 frames a second, as you can see, H.264. Now, as I mentioned, each file is 5 minutes in length. That's 281 megabytes. On the 720p mode, the battery life's about 2 hours. Now let's try and do something a bit more actiony. So I taped it to the side of my motorcycle helmet and took it out. So let's have a look at that. Now for some people this might be perfectly adequate. I mean, you can see what's going on, and if you were riding your motorcycle or bicycle along and you wanted some sort of evidence camera, this would do a reasonable job. Of course, you've got to remember that this isn't one of those cameras that loops the video round. It will fill up the card, and when the card's full it will stop recording. It also isn't the kind of camera that will auto start and stop if it receives power. It won't do any of that kind of motion activation stuff, anything like that. It's just a straightforward start and stop camera, and on a nice bright day like this it's okay. I mean, the video quality is a lot better than the ACT20 camera, but it's nowhere near as good as the 80816 keyring camera. Now let's try some low light conditions. Well, this is early in the morning, and as you can see the camera doesn't do too bad a job at all. There's a lot of cameras that can't cope with low light like this, and this one does a reasonable job. You notice how everyone gets rather blurry, and that's presumably a side effect of it trying to adjust to the low light, but it doesn't do that bad a job. As you can see here in this street scene, if I turn to face the shut Woosang, you notice it slowly increases the brightness upwards to try and improve the brightness of the scene. Now, as I'm driving along here, I wanted to take some sort of night driving footage, so I stuck the camera in my mouth as I was driving along. As you can see, I've got both hands on the steering wheel. I just wanted to do some sort of filming from a driver's eye view, and I didn't really want to tape the camera to my head. Now I passed it to the passenger, and that's the filming out of the window there. And as you can see, if you were riding along at night in the dark, the camera is quite decent at that as well. So if you wanted to put it on your bicycle handlebars and use it during your commute and show who knocked you off, I suppose the camera would do a decent job. And this clip is just to show you that I did know how to change the time and date after all, bottom left there. I just couldn't get round to it earlier on. Oh, and I nearly forgot. Here is the one photo that I took with the camera by taking the back off, flipping the switch, putting the back on, pressing the button. Really wasn't worth the hassle. I think it's just a freeze frame from the video. Now, there was one thing that concerned me about this camera. The case of it feels like very hard, brittle plastic, the kind of thing that would shatter if you dropped it on something hard. So I had to find out if I was right. And it turns out, no, it won't break if you drop it onto something hard. Well, at least mine didn't. And it'll still work afterwards as well. Now, there's one part of this camera that hasn't been thought through at all, and that's all the controls and things. I'll explain what I mean. You plug a mini HDMI lead into it, which you have to supply yourself. Now, what do you do next? Well, you can't play anything because you have to press that button in the back to turn it on or play, and you can't reach the button because you need the cap on the back to be able to touch it. Of course, you can push a pen nib into there, which is what I had to do, so I attached it up to the television and pushed the middle. And what happened? It plays the first clip off the card, and then it stops. So you press the button, it plays the first clip again, and that's all it'll do. Well, what's the point in that? So that hasn't been thought through. I think the insides of this camera are designed for going inside a different case with maybe more buttons on it. So I'm going to take my micro SD card out of this camera and use it in something more worthy, because this camera hasn't performed in the manner that I'd want it to. I mean, it might seem that I'm being a little bit negative, but you've got to remember this was advertised as a 1080p camera, but really it only records in 720p mode to any kind of quality. It also costs £46. Now, we already know about a cheaper, better quality 720p camera, and it's this, the 808-16. But the 808-16 needs a decent case. Hint, hint. Sooner or later, someone's going to come out with an action camera that costs less than £50 that's worth buying. But in my opinion, this isn't it. For the moment, thanks for watching.